I reject Claire Bennett as my mate. Ryan Caldwell's words struck the Moon Hall so cleanly that even the musicians stopped playing. Claire stood beneath the silver crest of Silver Ridge Pack, surrounded by nearly 200 witnesses, and for one terrible second, she forgot how to breathe. Ryan was only 6 feet away, close enough for her to see the tension in his jaw, close enough to remember the boy who had once promised beside a summer creek that he would never let rank decide who mattered. Yet his hand was wrapped around Vanessa Hartz, the daughter of one of the wealthiest alpha families in the territory. Claire heard whispers spreading behind her. Rejected. Omega. Of course, he chose Vanessa. She lowered her eyes, not because she was ashamed, but because she needed one heartbeat to steady herself. Ryan continued, his voice formal now. Silver Ridge needs strength. It needs alliances. I cannot build our future around sentiment. Sentiment. Claire almost smiled at the cruelty of such a careful word. Years of friendship, loyalty, and quiet promises reduced to sentiment. She felt the unfinished mate bracelet around her wrist, a narrow band of silver Ryan had given her months ago. Slowly, she unclasped it. Someone near the front laughed under their breath. Claire heard it. So did Ryan. Claire, he said, softer this time, perhaps expecting tears. Perhaps expecting her to beg him to reconsider. She did neither. She crossed the polished floor and placed the bracelet on the ceremonial table between them. Then I release you too. Ryan's expression changed. Only slightly. But Claire saw it. He had prepared himself for her heartbreak. He had not prepared himself for her dignity. Vanessa shifted beside him, her smile fading as the room grew strangely quiet. Claire turned before anyone could see how badly her hands were trembling. Each step toward the great doors felt heavier than the last, but she kept moving. She would not give them the sight they were waiting for. She would not collapse beneath their pity. High above the hall, beyond the glow of the chandeliers, a solitary man stood in the shadowed royal gallery. No one below had noticed his arrival. His dark coat carried no crest, and nothing about his appearance announced the authority that could bring entire packs to silence. Adrian Wolfe had come to Silver Ridge for reasons that had nothing to do with mating ceremonies. He had expected politics, rehearsed smiles, and ambitious alphas. He had not expected Claire Bennett. His gaze followed her as she reached the doors. Something ancient stirred inside him, a presence that had remained silent for years. Adrian's fingers tightened against the stone railing. His wolf had ignored noble women, healers, and every carefully arranged introduction placed before him. Yet now, as a rejected Omega walked away from an Alpha who had decided she was not valuable enough, the legendary creature within the Lycan King opened its eyes. And for the first time in years, it whispered a single word. Her. By the time Claire reached the eastern corridor, the laughter behind her had faded into something worse. Silence that felt like pity. She kept walking. Her hands trembled beneath the sleeves of her pale gray dress, but her shoulders remained straight. At the servants' stairwell, she finally stopped and pressed one palm against the cool stone wall. Her wolf was quiet inside her, curled somewhere beneath the ache left by Ryan's rejection. Claire closed her eyes. One breath, then another. She would not return to that hall. She would not ask Ryan why Vanessa's family name mattered more than every promise he had made. 20 minutes later, Claire stood inside the small room she had occupied near the Alpha residence for nearly 3 years. Everything she owned fit into one worn leather bag. 2 dresses, a winter sweater, her mother's silver locket, a pair of boots, and a book of herbal remedies with loose pages tucked between its covers. A soft knock came at the door. Vanessa entered without waiting. Leaving already? Claire continued folding her sweater. There is nothing keeping me here. Vanessa's expression tightened, as though Claire's calm disappointed her. Ryan made the right choice. Claire looked up. Then you should be happy. For a moment, Vanessa had no answer. Claire lifted her bag and walked past her. Outside, moonlight covered Silver Ridge in pale blue. The celebration had resumed in the distance, but Claire headed toward the northern trail, where the pack houses gave way to pine forest. She had almost reached the boundary marker when a frightened cry broke through the trees. Help! Claire stopped. Another voice followed, younger this time. She dropped her bag and ran toward the sound. Less than a quarter-mile from the trail, she found a boy trapped beneath a fallen branch. His mother was struggling to lift it alone. Claire recognized them immediately. Mrs. Harper had spent years treating her like an inconvenience, and her son had laughed with the others whenever someone called Claire a useless omega. None of that mattered now. "Hold still, Ben," Claire said, kneeling beside him. The branch was heavy, but not enormous. Claire and Mrs. Harper worked together, shifting it just enough for Ben to crawl free. The boy rushed into his mother's arms, shaken but unharmed. Mrs. Harper stared at Claire as though seeing her for the first time. "After everything we said about you, why would you stop?" Claire picked up her bag. Her chest still hurt. Ryan's rejection was still fresh enough to make every breath feel strange. But pain did not get to choose who she became, because he needed help. She turned toward the road beyond Silver Ridge. Neither Claire nor Mrs. Harper noticed the man standing among the distant pines. Adrian Wolfe had followed only far enough to make certain Claire reached the boundary safely. He had watched her run toward a cry for help without knowing who needed her. He had watched her offer kindness to people who had offered her none. Something inside the Lycan King shifted again. This time, Adrian understood why. Claire Bennett had lost her place in the pack tonight, yet she had refused to lose herself. And that made walking away from her suddenly impossible. Rain found Claire 3 miles beyond the Silver Ridge boundary. It began as a cold mist between the pines, then thickened until the road ahead disappeared behind a silver curtain. Claire pulled her coat tighter and kept walking, but the temperature was dropping fast, and exhaustion had begun to make every step feel heavier. When lightning illuminated the ridge to her left, she spotted the dark outline of an abandoned hunting cabin less than 100 yards from the road. The roof leaned slightly, but it was shelter. Claire hurried inside and found a dusty fireplace, an old wooden table, and enough dry kindling stacked beneath a bench to start a small fire. She had barely warmed her hands when the door opened. Claire rose quickly. A tall man stood beneath the doorway, rain darkening his coat and his black hair. She recognized him vaguely from the Moon Hall, though she could not remember seeing him among the Silver Ridge wolves. "I can leave," he said. His voice was calm, unexpectedly gentle. Claire glanced toward the storm. That would be foolish. There is room for 2 people. The stranger stepped inside. "Adrian." "Claire." His eyes held hers for a second longer than necessary, as if her name confirmed something he already knew. He sat across from her near the fire, leaving several feet between them. For a while, neither spoke. Rain tapped steadily against the roof. "You came from Silver Ridge," Adrian finally said. Claire nodded. "So did you." A faint smile touched his face. "Observant." "You were at the ceremony." Adrian studied the flames. "I was." Claire waited for the question she had already heard in every imagined conversation since leaving. "Why did he reject you?" Adrian surprised her. "Are you all right?" The simple question loosened something inside her. "Not yet," she admitted. "But I will be." Adrian looked at her with quiet interest. "Most people would be angry." "I am angry." Claire rubbed warmth back into her fingers. "I am also hurt. Those things do not have to decide what I become tomorrow." Adrian leaned back slightly. No council member had spoken to him this plainly in years. No noblewoman had ever looked at him without calculating what his attention might offer her. Claire did not even know who he was. "If Ryan Caldwell asked you to return," Adrian said, "would you?" Claire watched an ember collapse into the fire. "No." "You answered quickly. Because I already spent too long believing being chosen by him would prove I mattered." She raised her eyes. He had the right to choose what he wanted. I have the right to decide what his choice makes of me. Silence settled between them. Deep within Adrian, his wolf stirred again, not with impatience, but recognition. Claire reached into her bag, broke the last piece of bread she had packed, and offered him half. Adrian stared at it. "You barely have enough for yourself. Then we both barely have enough." For the first time that night, Adrian laughed softly. Claire smiled despite herself. Outside, thunder rolled beyond the mountains, but the little cabin felt strangely still. Adrian had entered Silver Ridge searching for the last trace of a forgotten Lycan bloodline. Instead, he found himself sitting beside a rejected Omega who shared her last meal with a stranger. And when Claire reached across the table to move an old silver object away from the edge, the instant her fingertips touched its surface, a pale light awakened beneath her hand. The pale light vanished so quickly that Claire wondered if exhaustion had invented it. She pulled her hand away from the silver object and stared at Adrian. He had gone completely still.
"What was that?" she asked.
Adrian looked down at the object resting on the table. It was a small medallion, no wider than 2 inches, engraved with a crescent surrounding the silhouette of a wolf.
"Something old," he said.
Claire frowned. Old things usually do not glow when I touch them. Despite himself, Adrian almost smiled. Usually? Never, actually. She reached toward it again, but Adrian quietly covered the medallion with a folded cloth. The movement was gentle, yet final. Claire noticed. "You know what happened. I have a theory, and you are not going to tell me. Not until I know whether I am wrong." Claire studied him across the fire. There was something unusual about Adrian, something she had sensed from the moment he entered the cabin. He spoke like a man accustomed to being listened to, but he never demanded her attention. Even sitting in a dusty hunting cabin with rainwater drying on his coat, he carried a stillness that felt almost ceremonial. "You are not an ordinary traveler," she said. Adrian met her gaze. "Neither are you, apparently." Claire gave a tired laugh. Silver Ridge would disagree. Silver Ridge appears to be wrong about several things. The words settled warmly somewhere beneath the ache in her chest. Claire looked away before he could see how much they affected her. What she did not know was that Adrian had carried that medallion across 6 territories. Royal historians believed it belonged to the lost house of Evermoon, an ancient Lycan bloodline that had vanished more than 70 years earlier. For months, Adrian had followed rumors, family records, and forgotten symbols without finding a single living descendant. The medallion had remained cold through every test, until Claire touched it. Yet Adrian refused to tell her. Not tonight. If Claire carried Evermoon blood, powerful families would suddenly see value where they had seen none before. They would praise the same woman they had dismissed hours earlier. Adrian wanted no part in becoming another man who valued Claire because of what her name might offer him. "Why were you really at Silver Ridge?" Claire asked. Adrian considered the question. "I was looking for someone. Did you find them?" His eyes rested on her. "I am beginning to think so." Claire's expression shifted with confusion, but before she could question him further, the rain softened against the roof. Dawn was approaching, turning the windows from black to gray. Claire stood and gathered her belongings. "I should leave before the roads become crowded." Adrian rose as well. "Where will you go?" Claire hesitated. Her original plan had been to reach the next town and find work, but worry had followed her through the night. "Back to Silver Ridge first." Adrian's brow tightened. "After what happened? Mrs. Dawson raised me after my mother died. She has been sick for weeks. I left without saying goodbye." Claire fastened her coat. "I will not let Ryan's decision take her away from me too." Adrian understood then that rejection had not driven Claire away from everything she loved. She was still choosing for herself what deserved to remain. He stepped aside and opened the cabin door. The storm had passed. Pale morning light spilled across the wet pines. "Goodbye, Adrian." "Goodbye, Claire." She walked towards Silver Ridge, without looking back. Adrian watched until the trees hid her from view. Then he uncovered the medallion. Silver light immediately returned, brighter now, pulsing beneath the ancient Evermoon crest. A moment later, distant horns echoed across the valley. 3 long notes. The royal signal. Adrian's guards were announcing the arrival of the legendary Lycan King. He closed his fingers around the medallion and looked toward the road Claire had taken. By noon, she would discover exactly who the stranger from the cabin really was. Claire heard the royal horns before she reached the first houses of Silver Ridge. 3 long notes rolled across the valley, deep enough to send birds lifting from the wet pines. She stopped on the road. Every wolf knew that signal. Royal arrival. By the time Claire entered the village, The quiet settlement she had left only hours earlier had transformed. Silver banners hung from balconies, ceremonial lanterns lined the main street, and pack members hurried toward Moon Hall wearing their finest clothes. No one seemed interested in the rejected Omega, returning with mud on her boots. For once, Claire was grateful for that. She went directly to Mrs. Dawson's cottage. The elderly woman was awake beside the window, wrapped in a blue quilt. "I wondered how long stubbornness would keep you away," she said. Claire crossed the room and took her hand. "I am sorry I left without saying goodbye." Mrs. Dawson studied her face and seemed to understand everything Claire had not said. "You came back. That is what matters." Claire stayed until the older woman fell asleep, then prepared tea, arranged her medicine, and left fresh water beside the bed. Only when she stepped outside again did she notice how silent the village had become. Everyone had gathered at Moon Hall. Claire intended to avoid it until a royal guard approached her. "Claire Bennett." She stiffened. "Yes. Your presence has been requested inside." Her stomach tightened. "By whom?" The guard merely opened the great doors. Hundreds of faces turned toward her. Claire nearly stepped backward. Ryan stood near the ceremonial platform in formal black, Vanessa beside him in silver. Pack elders formed a respectful line before a raised chair beneath the ancient wolf crest. Then Claire saw the man standing beside it. Adrian. The stranger from the hunting cabin wore a dark royal coat fastened with a silver clasp shaped like a wolf beneath a crescent moon. Guards stood behind him. Every alpha in the room had lowered his head. Claire forgot the crowd. She forgot Ryan. She could only stare. Adrian's expression remained composed, but warmth flickered in his eyes when he saw her. Ryan noticed. "Your Majesty," an elder said carefully, "may I present Claire Bennett, an Omega of Silver Ridge." Claire barely heard him. "Your Majesty." The words rearranged every conversation from the night before. Adrian was not a traveler searching the territories. He was the ruler whose name had become legend long before Claire was born. Ryan stepped forward quickly. Claire was not expected at the royal reception. Adrian turned his gaze toward him. "I expected her." Silence spread through the hall. Claire felt every eye return to her, but Adrian did not summon her closer or explain their meeting. Instead, he continued the formal introductions as though nothing unusual had happened. Daughters of influential families approached one after another. Adrian greeted each with courtesy. He chose none. Claire remained near the back, confused by the distance he deliberately kept between them. Then she understood. Adrian was watching. A servant offered refreshments to everyone around Claire but passed her without stopping. Two women whispered about the rejected Omega who should have known better than to appear before royalty. Ryan heard them and said nothing. Adrian heard them too. His expression never changed, but his attention sharpened. Claire suddenly remembered the silver medallion glowing beneath her fingers and Adrian's unanswered questions. Whatever had brought the Lycan King to Silver Ridge, it was larger than a mating ceremony. And somehow, impossibly, it now involved her. At last, Ryan stepped beside Adrian and lowered his voice, though not enough to escape the room's attention. "Your Majesty, forgive the distraction. Claire has no standing here anymore." Adrian slowly turned toward him. "No standing." Ryan glanced at Claire. "She was rejected last night." Adrian's eyes became unreadable. Around them, the hall fell completely silent. He had spent the morning wondering whether Silver Ridge had misunderstood Claire. Now he was beginning to understand something worse. They had never truly looked at her at all. Adrian let the silence remain until Ryan finally shifted beneath it. Claire stood near the back of Moon Hall, painfully aware that every face had turned toward her again. Only this time, no one was laughing. "She was rejected last night," Ryan repeated, more carefully. "The bond was unsuitable." Adrian's voice remained calm. "Unsuitable in what way?" Ryan hesitated. Vanessa moved closer to him, but Adrian never looked away. "Claire is an Omega. Silver Ridge needs alliances, influence, strong bloodlines. A future Alpha must consider what is best for the pack." Adrian nodded once, as though Ryan had presented a reasonable argument. "You have explained what she could not give your position." His gaze sharpened. Now tell me what kind of woman she is. Ryan opened his mouth, then stopped. Claire felt something inside her twist. They had known each other for years. Ryan knew she hated thunderstorms, but loved the smell of rain afterward. He knew she spent winter mornings delivering medicine to older pack members. He knew she had once worked 3 jobs when Mrs. Dawson became too sick to support herself. Yet beneath the attention of the entire hall, Ryan seemed unable to name a single thing about her that was not connected to rank. She is quiet, he finally said. Adrian waited. And Ryan's face tightened. She is dependable. And nothing came. A small voice broke the silence. She helped me last night.
Claire turned.
Ben Harper stood beside his mother near the doors. Mrs. Harper looked nervous, but she placed a reassuring hand on her son's shoulder. I got stuck under a fallen branch, Ben continued. Claire came back for me. Mrs. Harper swallowed. After the way some of us treated her, she still stopped. She did not ask for anything. Another voice followed from the crowd. Mr. Ellis, the village baker, raised his hand awkwardly. She brought food to my family when I was sick last winter. An elderly woman near the aisle spoke next. She reads letters to me because my eyesight is poor. Then another, and another. Small acts Claire had forgotten began returning through other people's voices. None were heroic. None carried titles or political value. They were cups of soup, errands through snow, herbs left beside a sickbed, hours spent listening when someone was lonely. Claire's throat tightened. Adrian watched her rather than the people speaking. She looked overwhelmed, almost embarrassed by the praise. That told him more than the praise itself. Vanessa finally stepped forward. Your Majesty, kindness is admirable, but kindness does not make someone worthy of standing beside power. Adrian turned to her.
No.
His answer was so quiet that Vanessa almost looked relieved. Then he continued. Power is what makes kindness difficult. The room stilled again. Anyone can be generous when generosity costs nothing. Character is revealed when someone has every reason to become bitter and chooses otherwise. Claire remembered the cabin, the shared bread, the question Adrian had refused to answer. Ryan's posture stiffened. With respect, Your Majesty, you barely know her. Adrian looked toward Claire. Perhaps. But I knew enough to watch her help a child whose family had mocked her only hours after you rejected her. Ryan stared at him. Claire did too. She had not known Adrian was there. Adrian stepped down from the ceremonial platform. The distance between them narrowed with each measured step. Several noble women moved aside automatically, expecting him to pass Claire and continue toward the families gathered near the front. He did not. He stopped a few feet from her. Claire's heartbeat quickened, but Adrian made no claim and issued no command. He simply looked at her as he had in the cabin, as though the crowded hall had disappeared. Then he held out his hand. Claire Bennett, he said, I believe Silver Ridge has spent years deciding where you belong without ever asking you. So I will ask instead. Where do you want to stand? Claire stared at Adrian's open hand. Only hours earlier, another man had stood before this same pack and decided her future without asking what she wanted. Now the most powerful Lycan in the territories was waiting for her answer as though her choice mattered more than his authority. The difference unsettled her more than any royal command could have. I do not know, she admitted. A murmur moved through the hall. Claire expected Adrian to withdraw his hand. Instead, his expression softened. That is an honest answer. She looked around Moon Hall. She saw Mrs. Harper beside Ben, Mr. Ellis near the aisle, elders who had ignored her for years, and wolves who had laughed when Ryan rejected her. Then her gaze found Ryan. He looked almost offended by her hesitation, as if some part of him had expected Claire to remain exactly where he had left her. Vanessa stood beside him, suddenly very quiet. Claire looked back at Adrian. I know where I do not want to stand anymore. Adrian's eyes warmed. That is a beginning. He lowered his hand without forcing her to take it. Then he turned toward the gathered noble families. I was told Silver Ridge had prepared introductions. Several women straightened hopefully. Adrian walked past them. He passed the daughters of wealthy alphas, the carefully arranged alliances, and every polished promise his council had expected him to consider. Then he returned to Claire. "I came here believing I was searching for something lost," he said. "Instead, I found someone everyone else had failed to see." Claire's heartbeat quickened. Ryan stepped forward. "Your Majesty, surely you are not suggesting that Claire could be considered for a royal bond?" Adrian glanced at him. "I am suggesting nothing." He faced Claire again. "I am asking." The room became so quiet that Claire could hear the rainwater dripping from the eaves outside. Adrian stood several feet away, giving her space. "Claire Bennett, I cannot promise you an easy life. My world carries obligations, scrutiny, and choices that affect thousands of people. I will not pretend otherwise."
He paused.
"But if I offered you a place beside me, not beneath me, would you choose to stand there?" Claire felt the old instinct to make herself smaller. It had been trained into her through years of lowered eyes and careful silence. Omega. Quiet. Useful. Never important. Then she remembered herself beneath the pines, running toward Ben's frightened voice. She remembered sharing her last bread in the cabin. She remembered telling Adrian that Ryan's decision did not get to determine what she became. Those words belonged to her too. Claire looked once more at Ryan. There was no triumph in her chest. She did not need him humiliated. She only needed to stop measuring herself by the moment he had rejected her. She turned away from him. Adrian was still waiting. Claire crossed the final few feet between them and placed her hand in his. Warmth moved through her fingers, familiar and steady. Somewhere deep inside her, her quiet wolf lifted its head. "Yes," Claire said. Adrian did not pull her closer. He simply closed his hand gently around hers. The royal guards lowered their heads. One by one, the pack elders followed. Claire watched the people who had once expected her to disappear make room for her instead. Ryan remained motionless. Adrian looked at Claire, not at the bowing crowd. "Then you stand where you choose." Claire breathed slowly. For the first time in years, she believed it. But across the hall, Ryan's face had changed. The shock was gone. In its place was something Claire had never expected to see: regret. And when his eyes dropped to their joined hands, he suddenly stepped forward. "Wait," Ryan said. "The rejection was never completed." Ryan's words stopped the room. Claire felt Adrian's hand remain steady around hers, but he made no move to speak for her. That silence mattered. Ryan stepped away from Vanessa, his confidence returning now that he believed he had found a rule powerful enough to undo the moment. "The ceremony requires both sides to complete the release before the bond is formally dissolved," he said. Claire placed the bracelet down, but the final declaration was never entered into the pack record. Whispers moved through Moon Hall. Claire stared at the man she had once trusted with her future. Last night, Ryan had wanted witnesses to her rejection. Now, with those same witnesses watching her stand beside a king, he wanted procedure. "Why does that matter to you now?" Claire asked. Ryan hesitated. "Because we made a mistake."
"We."
The word landed differently than he intended. Claire gently released Adrian's hand and stepped forward on her own.
"No, Ryan."
"You made a choice." His expression tightened. "I was thinking about Silver Ridge. You were thinking about what standing beside me would cost you." Ryan glanced toward Adrian, then back at Claire. "Things have changed." Claire almost smiled. "That is exactly the problem." The hall became quiet again. "Nothing about me changed between last night and this morning. I am still the woman you rejected. I still have the same name, the same rank, the same quiet wolf. The only difference is that someone powerful decided I was worth noticing." Ryan's face softened. "Claire, that is not what I meant." "Then tell me what changed." He could not. Claire understood the answer anyway. Adrian's presence had transformed her value in Ryan's eyes without changing a single thing inside her. That realization hurt, but it also freed something she had carried for years. Ryan took a careful step closer. "We had history." "We did." Claire's voice remained gentle. "And I will not pretend it meant nothing. But history is not permission to choose me only when someone else does." Adrian watched without interrupting. He could have ended the argument with a royal order.
Claire knew that.
Ryan knew it too. But Adrian stayed where he was because this was not his rejection to resolve. It was hers. Claire turned toward the pack elder responsible for ceremonial records. What words complete the release? The elder swallowed. You must state freely that you surrender all claim to the unfinished bond and choose your path without obligation. Claire nodded. She faced Ryan one final time. For a heartbeat, she saw the younger man beside the summer creek, before ambition had taught him to measure love against advantage. She could mourn that memory without returning to it. Ryan Caldwell, I surrender every claim to the bond we were meant to share. I release you without anger, and I choose my own path without obligation. The elder lowered his head. The bond is closed. Claire waited for devastation. Instead, she felt quiet. Ryan looked down, regret settling across his features, but Claire no longer needed his regret to repair her dignity. Vanessa remained beside him, uncertain now, and Claire felt no victory over her either. This had never needed to become one woman defeating another. It was simply Claire choosing herself. She turned back. Adrian had not moved. You could have ordered him to stop, she said softly. Yes. Why did you not? Adrian's answer came, without hesitation. Because you did not need me to. Claire felt her wolf stir, warmer than before. She stepped beside him again, this time without waiting for an invitation. Adrian offered his hand, and Claire chose to take it. Then a strange silver glow appeared beneath the collar of her dress. Claire froze. Her mother's locket had begun to shine. Across the room, the ancient royal medallion beneath Adrian's coat answered with a light of its own. The light spread before anyone could speak. Claire looked down as the silver glow beneath her collar brightened, soft rather than blinding, tracing the edge of the locket her mother had left her years ago. Across from her, Adrian slowly drew the ancient medallion from beneath his coat. The moment both pieces were visible, the symbols upon them answered each other. 2 crescent moons. 2 wolves. 1 forgotten crest. A breathless murmur passed through Moon Hall. Claire stared at Adrian. You have seen this before. Yes. His voice was quiet. Last night, when you touched this medallion in the cabin, it awakened for the first time in generations. Claire remembered his expression beside the fire, the questions he had refused to answer. What does it mean? Adrian looked toward an elderly royal historian standing near the guards. The old man had already gone pale with recognition. The Evermoon crest, he whispered. Several elders lowered their heads in disbelief. Claire did not understand. Adrian did. House Evermoon had been one of the oldest Lycan bloodlines, believed lost more than 70 years ago. Its descendants were remembered not for conquest, but for an unusual bond with the ancient moon rites. Adrian had crossed 6 territories searching for evidence that someone from that family had survived. Now the answer stood beside him, wearing a simple gray dress and looking as though she wanted the floor to stop moving beneath her feet. Claire, Adrian said gently, your mother may have been descended from House Evermoon. She touched the locket. My mother never told me. Perhaps she was protecting you. Around them, the room changed. Wolves who had barely noticed Claire that morning now stared with open wonder. An elder who had once dismissed her stepped forward eagerly. If she carries Evermoon blood, then Silver Ridge must formally recognize her status. Claire looked at him, and something inside her became very still. Hours ago, she had possessed no standing. Now a glowing piece of silver had made them reconsider. Adrian noticed the realization in her eyes.
No, he said.
The elder stopped. Adrian stepped beside Claire, not in front of her. You will not honor her today for a bloodline you ignored yesterday. If Claire accepts recognition, it will happen on her terms. Claire looked at him. Then something warmer than light moved through her chest. Her wolf, always so distant that she had sometimes wondered whether it existed at all, stirred with sudden clarity. Claire closed her eyes. She felt no explosion of power, no need to prove herself. Only presence. Steady. Awake. Hers. When she opened her eyes, Adrian was smiling. You knew, she whispered. I suspected. Before you asked me to stand beside you? Yes. Claire's heart sank for half a second, until Adrian continued. But I did not know when I first noticed you. I did not know when you helped Ben. I did not know when you shared your last piece of bread with me. He lowered himself to one knee before her. The room gasped, but Adrian never looked away from Claire. Before the moon revealed what you were, I already knew who you were. Claire's eyes filled, not from humiliation this time, but from the strange relief of finally being seen without having to become someone else first. She offered Adrian her hand.
He rose and took it gently.
Behind them, Ryan lowered his gaze. Claire felt no anger toward him anymore. His rejection had hurt, but it no longer defined the road ahead. She walked with Adrian toward the open doors of Moon Hall. Outside, the storm clouds had broken apart, revealing a clear afternoon sky above the wet pines. At the threshold, Claire stopped and looked back once at the place where she had spent years trying to become worthy of belonging. Then she faced forward. Adrian did not lead her. Claire did not follow him. They stepped onto the road together, side by side, while the silver light faded from her locket and something far more lasting remained. Claire Bennett had spent years waiting for someone else to choose her. At last, she understood that destiny had begun the moment she chose herself.